Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. In this video, I'm going to give you my top 5 tips for investing in comic books. I've done several videos on comic book collecting. I have told you guys it is an established market, but in my opinion, at some point, a lot of these prices are going to fall. If you don't believe me, that is already starting to come true, because if you chart the value of Amazing Spider-Man 129, first appearance of the Punisher, very popular key book, one of my favorite comic books overall. That book within the last year, has lost 10% of its value in grades 9.2, 9.4, 9.6 on average. The reason for that is, guys, that book is overhyped and overbought. There are a lot of copies of Amazing Spider-Man 129 out there on the marketplace. That book is not rare. Not even in high grade is that book rare. It's popular, and as a result of that popularity, it has a lot of demand. A lot of that demand is also stoked by a lot of speculators and a lot of people inside the comic book industry who consider that book to be one of the top 10 Bronze Age keys. So there's a lot of people that just look over, oh, these are the top 10 books I should be investing in. Okay, I'm going to put all my money into an Amazing Spider-Man 129, regardless of doing any market research, simply because you opened up to page 50 of the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide, and it told you that Amazing Spider-Man 129 was one of the top tier bronze titles. You have to do more research than that, guys. You really have to analyze these markets properly. So where am I going with this? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about my top 5 tips for investing in comic books for the long term, meaning 5 years or more. First tip, go after high-grade, pre-1975, graded key issue comic books. Now, why am I telling you to go after pre-1975 comic books? Let's have a discussion about this. Well, in 1970, comic book collecting started to go mainstream. Believe it or not, it was in the year 1970 that the first original edition of the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide was first published and produced. This brought a lot of people into the market for vintage and, at the time, modern era comic books. This is why I tell you guys, books like Amazing Spider-Man 129, X-Men 94, Giant Size X-Men 1, Incredible Hulk 181. None of those books are rare. Those books were hoarded en masse by speculators back in the day. Those books are selling for a premium today because of demand. It's basic economics, guys. There's a large supply of those books on the market in almost all grades, up to including 9.8. The problem is there's a lot of speculators and investors operating in the market today where every time one of those books comes to market, it will sell at a high equilibrium price. Now, it may be lower in certain cases, as I just told you with the Amazing Spider-Man 129, than the one before it, but overall, it will sell at a fairly high price point because the whole industry is geared right now towards advertising a lot of these high-grade key issues, whether from the Silver Age, Bronze Age, or even the Golden Age. When we look at Detective Comics 27, Action Comics 1, Marvel Comics 1, those items in their own right are major key issues that command a premium. So that's my first tip. Be very careful if you are going after modern era comic books, Copper Age comic books, and the like. Amazing Spider-Man 300, even in CGC 9.8, in my opinion, is a very poor investment long term. There's too many out there. There's too many people that were disappointed by the overall appearance of Venom and the Venom movie, to the point where that book is really what I call a speculator trap. Meaning, a lot of these Timmies, a lot of these speculators that come into this market, they look at ASM 300 because it's a lower priced key issue that they can buy in their minds in ultra high grade condition, which is what 9.8 would be. The problem is, back when that issue debuted, back in 1988, I believe, so many of them were hoarded that the amount of those books out there on the market today is substantial. A lot of them exist in ungraded form, believe it or not, because people know they can just flip them raw and somebody will buy it because it's considered a major issue at present time in the Marvel Universe. The same thing can be said with The Walking Dead issue 1. A lot of people don't realize that pretty much almost all the copies that were graded of The Walking Dead #1 are almost all in 9.8 condition. It's actually hard to get that particular comic book in a lower tier condition when we're looking at like 7.0, 7.5, 8.0. Most of the copies that were graded, because they were bought bagged and boarded, graded 9.0, 9.2, 9.4, 9.6, 9.8. That is not a good long-term investment. What propelled the value of The Walking Dead was the television series. As we move on and out from that particular television show, that book is going to become less and less important in modern era comic history. Please know that going in. It is, again, a speculator trap. It's something where somebody can come in and go, I want to buy a high-grade key issue, and they save up their money and they go, well, I have a couple thousand here. I can get a Walking Dead 1 in CGC 9.8. And somebody like me looks at that issue and goes, why on earth would you buy that when you can get a 9.4 X-Men 94, a giant size X-Men 1 in a near mint condition grade, or something equivalent from the Bronze Age era, or even in some cases the Silver Age era, which we're going to talk about shortly. So be very careful when you are investing in comic books for the long term that you don't fall into a lot of these traps. My next tip is very important, and a lot of people are not listening to this advice, unfortunately. Avoid movie hype and speculation. Right now is not the time to be buying a Tomb of Dracula 10 or a Werewolf by Night 32. Now, if you don't know what a Tomb of Dracula 10 is, it's the first appearance of Blade the Vampire Slayer that appeared in Tomb of Dracula, the comic book series, issue 10, which came out in 1973. Yes, to be fair, it is a coveted Bronze Age key issue, especially if you're into horror comics. But thanks to the announcement that Marvel is going to be releasing fairly soon, assuming we get through the pandemic and movie theaters are able to open and stay open, a new movie based on the popular Blade character. Guess what? Little Timmy's, speculators, and Poindexters are all going after Tomb of Dracula 10 because it features the first appearance of Blade the Vampire Slayer. Now, why on earth would you buy a comic book simply because a movie was announced utilizing that character? I don't get this logic. I can chart this and show you guys that prior to the movie's release, demand for these particular comic books increases dramatically. Then after the movie comes out, demand falls off. People lose money by buying into the hype. Smart investors sell into the hype. Speculators buy into the hype. Let me say that again. Investors sell into the hype. Speculators, Timmys, Poindexters, they buy into the hype. Do you see that they're doing the opposite of investing? You cannot go to the market right now, buy a copy of Tomb of Dracula 10 in any of the near mint grades graded by CGC and tell me that you are a serious comic book investor, because you would not be buying it at these high prices. Same can be said for Werewolf by Night 32. For literally months, if not years, there's been rumors there's going to be a movie on Werewolf by Night, meaning the first appearance of Moon Knight. That's issue 32. That key character has yet to grace the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, it's rumored that Disney Plus, which owns Marvel, is going to be doing some type of series featuring Moon Knight. So right now, demand for Werewolf by Night, issue number 32, is off the charts. Do not buy Werewolf by Night 32 right now until we get more info on this possible TV series, or if Marvel is going to do a movie on the particular character. I honestly have my doubts as to how well they can bring the character Moonlight to life on either the television screen or the big screen. We'll see. I remember back many, many years ago when it was announced they were going to do a movie, believe it or not, on Man-Thing. Now, Man-Thing is like a poor man's Swamp Thing, if you don't know who Man-Thing is. It's like a third or fourth tier Marvel character. Well, at that particular time, prices for Man-Thing comic books were going through the roof. People were paying a premium to get Man-Thing 1 from, 1973, done by Marvel Comics, and prices crashed when the movie ended up sucking and it ended up going straight to the Sci-Fi Channel. It did not even hit the DVD platform, Blu-ray platform, or even the movie theater. It went right to Sci-Fi. A lot of people panned the movie, and guess what happened? Prices for Man-Thing comic books came crashing down after that particular event. Now, you could argue there are people out there that are still going after first appearance issues of Man-Thing, the origin issues, and the like, but it's not like it was when that movie was announced. So, please avoid all movie hype and speculation. I'm going to say it once more. Investors sell into the movie hype. Speculators, Timmies, Poindexters, the people that don't know what they're doing, the people that like to call themselves investors and live in their mom's basement, they buy in to the movie hype. So know the difference, okay? Can't be more clear on that. 3, if investing, avoid non-key issues. Run and set collecting is pretty much dead. Everybody that is coming into this market, well, almost everybody, okay, I'm going to be fair, there's always exceptions. Almost everybody that is coming into the vintage comic book marketplace at present time is going after key issues or origin issues or issues that feature crossover events with certain characters and events that either correspond to the storylines at large or even the cinematic universe created by Marvel or DC. Nobody, virtually nobody, is trying to put together a full run of X-Men comic books or Tomb of Dracula comic books or Amazing Spider-Man comic books. There are some people out there that disagree with this and say, nope, Sean, I'm a passionate collector. I'm not an investor. I'm going after a run of X-Men comic books from 1963 all the way up to 1977 because that's the year I was born and I really like those issues in that run. Okay. That is an exception, not the rule. Back before CGC came on the scene, believe it or not, people used to love putting together set collections of a lot of these comic books, even if they weren't key issues. Even if the comic book was only worth a couple of bucks, they would go after those comic books to fill the gap in their collections or runs. With CGC on the scene, with all this high-profile investor money flowing through the comic book marketplace at present time, run and or set collecting is pretty much dead. You will not make money long-term going after non-key issues. Key issues are where it's at, guys. I don't make the rules. I just comment on the trends I see as a result of those unspoken rules being made. Next, number 4, go after out-of-flavor keys or out-of-the-spotlight key issues. What do I mean by that? Well, right now, you got a lot of speculators out there going after Tomb of Dracula 10 or Werewolf by Night 32. Well, why don't you go after a nice copy of X-Men 94 or Strange Tales 135? Both those books are key books, and prices actually have stabilized because there really isn't anything going on right now spectacular in the X-Men universe that is causing demand to accelerate for X-Men 94. There's nothing happening in regards to Strange Tales. Everybody knows Strange Tales 135 was the first appearance of the Shield and Nick Fury. As a result, prices were already accelerating many, many years ago when the first Avengers movie was announced, even probably before that. Well, today, prices for both those books have at least stabilized. So rather than going after your Tomb of Dracula 10s and your Werewolf by Night 32s, you should be going after the after-run keys. And what I mean by that is the keys that already had their run-up in price and are now starting to stabilize and come back down because people realize we already know who Nick Fury is. There's no excitement there anymore. Our excitement's on the next big thing because that's how speculators think, guys. To outsmart the speculators, you have to have an investor mindset. And you do that by not letting your emotions run wild and go, I gotta get the first appearance of Blade the Vampire Slayer, otherwise I'm gonna miss out. The book's gonna go to $10,000 in 9.4 condition. Newsflash, Blade the Vampire Slayer in 9.4 condition will never be a $10,000 book. Neither will X-Men 94 by that logic. There's not that much fundamental demand in these markets to make that happen, guys. I'm sorry. And I know a lot of you guys want to look back and go, well, hey, if I would have bought this book at this price point here, it would be worth X number of dollars here. So therefore, what you're thinking, Well, if I buy this book at this price point here in the year 2020 and I hold it for 5 to 10 years, it's obviously going to appreciate that much because looking back, that's how much it appreciated from 2008 to the year 2020. It doesn't work that way, guys. These are not markets that are, how do I want to say this, that are operating in any type of systematic pattern. They are not. The collectibles and antiques marketplace, even Wall Street, they don't operate utilizing those basic fundamentals where you're looking for a pattern, you're trying to see, well, if this item went up X number of dollars in 12 years and the market's still valid or established, as we would say in the antiques and collectibles trade, therefore, over the next 12 years, it's going to go up just as much as it did in the previous 12. It doesn't work like that. Understand that going in. My last and final tip. Be careful going after esoteric comic books and genres. Let me use this as a word of caution to you guys. Back when CGC hit the scene, right around 2004, 2005, 2006, was really at the time that a lot of people started to notice, okay, third-party grading is here to stay. CGC premiered in the year 2000. By 2005, 2006, trends were emerging, and people were like, okay, I got to jump on the bandwagon. So a lot of people were looking at the CGC census, and they were trying to analyze what areas of the market were pretty much undervalued per se, or selling at a discount, because I don't like the term undervalued. You guys know that if you watched any of my previous videos. So one of the things that a lot of these speculators came up with, wow, 1970s 20-cent Marvel horror comics are undervalued. So all these speculators came into the market and they started bidding up some of these esoteric comics like Dead of Night or Vault of Evil in CGC 9.4, CGC 9.6 condition. And when that wasn't enough, they went all the way back to the 15-cent Marvel comics like Chamber of Darkness 1, Tower of Shadows 1, and they started bidding up those particular items in CGC 9.4 to the point where the price was like $500 for a copy of Tower of Shadows 1 or Chamber of Darkness 1 in CGC 9.4 condition grade. Well, today, go and look what a copy of a 9.4 graded Chamber of Darkness 1 or Tower of Shadows 1 goes for on the marketplace, and you're going to see just how much money those speculators lost by putting all their money in esoteric comic books like that were not established. What they should have been doing is going after the wonderful giant-size X-Men 1s, the Amazing Spider-Man 129s, the Strange Tales 135, and all those other key issues that were selling at a discount at that particular time, meaning the year 2006, 2007, right around those years. Now, this also applies to other genres. Be careful if you're going to get into horror comic books, Dells, Westerns, Disneys, with few exceptions, guys. Those books, they're not going to continue appreciating. A lot of those books are pretty much considered has-beens at this point. The people that are getting into collecting vintage comic books at present day are going after high-end vintage comic books, with key issues being the focus. They're not going after Westerns or Dells or Disneys to an overall extent. There are some exceptions, yes, I know. And they're not going after Golden Age horror. EC comic books in high grade are not scarce overall. And they've also been bidded up in price to the point where they are overhyped at present time. I'm going to even apply this concept, and I know some of you are going to disagree with this, to even high grade generic superhero comic books. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of you really want to own a issue of Batman or maybe Action Comics or even Superman from the early maybe 1940s, 50s, and maybe you can't afford a key issue. So if something comes up that isn't really a key issue, it's just a generic issue of Batman and maybe it was printed in the 1940s or 50s, you're going to bid it up on Comic Link. And the problem with that is, if it's not a key issue, guys, it's not worth investing in. And I know there's a lot of you that disagree with me because you'll tell me, Sean, there's only 3 known copies in the census. Yes, that's why it's selling at the price point it is. Because the fact that there's 3, and most people don't care about that book. Now, if it has a key cover, if it has something else going on for it, by all means, that's not falling into this formula that I'm providing to you right now. What I am saying is your average Batman or Superman book just because it's from the 1950s out there and it's in high grade. That doesn't necessarily mean that's a good investment to buy for the long term. Be very careful if that is your mindset. That is more of a speculator mindset overall, in my opinion. Most investors that are coming into this market, remember guys, there's a lot of people that come into this market, and I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what you do for a living. Everybody has a budget. When I go after coins, there's a reason why I'm not bidding on $250,000 coins. Now, could I afford to buy a few $250,000 coins? Yes, but it would pretty much entail me putting my entire net worth in those several couple of coins that I could buy at $250,000 a piece. When I analyze the coin collecting marketplace, I'm going after coins that pretty much sell for $10,000 and under. The reason being is that's my budget. It's no different with a lot of these investors coming into these markets. They all have a budget to work from. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. It is better if you're getting into a lot of these vintage markets that are established or mature. You are better off going after one very valuable key item rather than buying 10 different smaller, lesser key items just because they're cheaper and you can buy them over the long term. Meaning, let's say that you have a $1,000 budget to spend on comic books. You are honestly better off analyzing the market for one $10,000 or $12,000 comic book and going after that one key issue, learning all there is to know about the trends in the market for that book, rather than every month buying $1,000 comic book for the entire year. You see what I mean? You're better off spending your entire yearly budget on just one key book. And ultimately, if you choose wisely and if you choose a book that has true organic demand and is possibly scarce, that book will at least has the potential to go up in value, if not remain stable over the long term. And in some of these markets, that's all you can hope for. I'm being very honest. Please don't listen to the hype. There's a lot of people getting into these markets that think, I can spend $5,000 on a comic book. In 6 months, I'm going to flip it for double. This market, the vintage market for comic books, isn't really working out that way going forward. It used to be that way, but now those speculative markets have been replaced not by comic books, but by Magic the Gathering cards, Pokemon cards, graded video games, vintage video games, and even attempting to flip items within a 6-month period in those speculative categories, meaning vintage graded video games, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, that's extremely risky at present time. I think it was Rudy with Alpha Investments that did a video about the guy that bought, I think it was an unlimited Black Lotus that was graded by BGS, and he paid something like $23,000, $24,000 for, and he ended up flipping it like less than a year later, and it only went for half of the value that he paid. You have to be very careful in these markets, guys. Pop culture markets are brutal. It's a down and dirty capitalist market, and there's very little stability in a lot of these markets. Comic books are coming into their own. Don't get me wrong. Vintage comic books, if you tell me, Sean, I'm putting my money in an Incredible Hulk 181 in 9.2, 9.4, 9.6, 9.8 condition, yes, that's a blue chip collectible in that market. But there's still no guarantees, guys. That comic at any time can fall in value. It's the same thing with a lot of these other markets in the trade, whether mature or speculative. But one thing I will tell you about pop culture collectibles, the market is brutal. It can either reward or punish you. And one of the reasons that I started this channel, believe it or not, is because I see the long-lasting effects of the people that are getting punished in these markets. And they're coming out of these markets going, antiques and collectibles are a scam. No, they're not a scam. You chose to invest incorrectly over the long term in these markets. That's why the market punished you. If you would have chosen wisely, you would be coming out on the other end going, oh my God, these markets are amazing. This Sean guy who's telling people to put their money in the stock market, he's insane. I can keep making all this money all the time. No, you can't. These are not perfect markets. And if you don't know what a perfect market is, we should not even be having this conversation. So more on that in an upcoming video. Thanks, guys, and I appreciate your views. I appreciate your comments, and as always, I do read all your feedback. Have a good night.